Some stories whisper through time, others scream into the silence, demanding to be heard. This is one of those stories. The morning mist still clung to the trees like breath on a cold mirror, the air sharp with the scent of pine and adventure. It was September 2nd, 2010, when 34-year-old Jonathan Yette and his 25-year-old girlfriend, Rachel Bagnor, set off on what was meant to be a peaceful escape into the Canadian wilderness. British Columbia welcomed them with a deceptive calmness, a tranquility that would soon unravel. Their plan was simple, at least on paper, a 3-day hiking trip through the lush mountains near Piton, a town nestled in British Columbia's rugged embrace. Their route, a challenging 26-kilometer stretch starting from Mount Matilee and leading to the serene Valentine Lake. For Rachel, this was more than just a trek. It was a final breath of nature before dedicating herself to volunteering at a children's welfare center. Jonathan, meanwhile, was to return to the United States shortly after their hike. But as the mountain air swallowed their silhouettes, they vanished, leaving only questions, broken signals, and a silence that grew louder with each passing hour. The vanishing. 3 days. That was the plan. But on the 4th, nothing. When September 4th rolled around, Jonathan and Rachel had already entered Mount Matilee's forest trail, never to be seen again. Concern didn't take long to rise. Rachel's sister, Elizabeth, knew something was wrong almost instantly. Rachel wasn't one to disappear without a word, especially on a trip like this. Calls to Rachel's phone rang out into empty space. No response, no voicemail, just that cold, sterile silence that never bodes well. It was September 6th when Elizabeth could take no more. She contacted the authorities and reported her sister missing. What followed was a swift and organized search. The police began combing through the dense forest, knowing every hour could be the difference between life and death. It wasn't long before they located the couple's vehicle. There it was, Jonathan's Toyota sedan, parked inconspicuously along a narrow forest trail at the base of Mount Matilee. It looked as if it had been left there only hours ago. Inside, officers found Jonathan's phone and his camera, both undisturbed, both waiting to tell their side of the story. Chapter 3. Echoes in the Lens. The investigators, now standing beneath the shadow of tall evergreens, turned to the only leads they had: technology. The phone told them little. Its last calls and messages ceased after the morning of September 4th. Most were work-related, mundane, offering no hints at fear, no cries for help. But the camera told a different story. At first glance, it was filled with scenic captures, emerald green valleys, winding trails, distant peaks bathed in golden light. Snapshots of a couple immersed in nature's splendor. But nestled among these images were two photographs that shifted the narrative entirely. The first, a damaged tree. It stood twisted and splintered, as if something powerful had torn through it, perhaps a storm, maybe an animal or something else. The second image was more haunting. Taken from a distance, it showed a bear mid-step, looming in the frame. But it wasn't just the bear's presence, it was the feeling, the way the photo was angled, the tension it held, as if the creature was watching, following. The search team, though trained to handle danger, couldn't ignore the unease that crept into their bones. Something about those images, the broken tree, the bear, the trail gone silent, suggested this wasn't just a case of two hikers getting lost. It was something else. A trail gone cold. And so, with only faint clues and a deepening mystery, the hunt for answers began. What started as a simple weekend hike had now twisted into something darker, something the wilderness itself seemed determined to keep secret. In the next chapter, we delve deeper into the investigation, the chilling clues left behind, and the strange encounters that led some to believe this disappearance was no accident. Because sometimes, when you go looking for answers in the woods look back. The visitors at the window. Sometimes, the things that go bump in the night don't disappear with the morning light. Sometimes, they linger. The camera, so far a silent witness, held more than still images of nature and distant wildlife. Within its digital vault were two video clips, and they would change everything. The first video, time-stamped the night of September 3rd, captured the interior of the modest hotel room in Taunton, where Jonathan and Rachel had stayed before heading out. At first, it seemed unremarkable, a quiet room, dimly lit, static. But then, movement. Just outside the window, a figure emerged. a humanoid silhouette, distorted by the darkness but unmistakably present. It approached the window slowly, deliberately, and then it stopped. It lingered. For minutes it stood there, motionless, watching, waiting. Then, with deliberate intent, it reached out and tried to open the window. The handle jiggled, but the latch held firm. The footage, though grainy, revealed something even more disturbing. Its hands. They were too large, inhumanly so, broad, with long, exaggerated fingers that pressed against the glass in ghostly patterns. The innkeeper, later interviewed by the police, confirmed the footage's authenticity. She even provided a second clip, one recorded from the hotel's own security system. In it, Jonathan is seen standing in the lobby, frantic, calling the police. His voice trembles with urgency. According to the innkeeper, the police did respond that night, but their search yielded nothing. No trespassers, no signs of wildlife, no footprints in the dew-soaked grass outside the window. Perhaps it was the remoteness of the inn. Perhaps it was something else. Only 2 guests had checked in that night, Jonathan and Rachel, no others. And then, as if the mystery hadn't rooted itself deeply enough, there came another chilling twist. 12 years later, in 2022, the innkeeper herself vanished. She was last seen locking up the same establishment where Jonathan and Rachel had stayed. No note, no sign of struggle, no trace. To this day, she remains missing. The mountain speaks in silence. The earth doesn't always scream when it swallows you. Sometimes, it simply closes its mouth and waits. On September 6th, the same day Elizabeth reported Rachel missing, the search efforts began. Not just a team, not just a handful of volunteers, but an all-out operation. 3 helicopters took to the skies, circling Mount Matilee and the surrounding valleys. They completed over 50 flights, scanning the wilderness from above. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police coordinated on the ground, joined by an army of volunteers. They searched the thick forests. They entered caves. They combed through mist-laced valleys. But the land gave nothing back. No scraps of clothing, no trail, no sign that 2 people had entered and not left, except perhaps for a single false hope, a pair of sunglasses. It was discovered weeks after the official search had ended in October. Weathered, it looked like something Rachel might have worn. But it would later turn out that it belonged to another hiker entirely, another ghost in the woods, but not theirs. And then came another anomaly. Humanoid footprints, deeply imprinted into the moist earth near a narrow path off the main trail. But these were not standard hiking boot impressions. They were larger, oddly shaped, almost barefoot in design, but off, slightly too wide, too flat, and they didn't seem to walk in a clear direction. They just appeared, then vanished into nowhere. RCMP officer Steve LeClaire, a veteran in wilderness search and rescue, would later suggest the couple may have gotten lost, that maybe they had wandered off trail, become trapped in a ravine, or succumbed to the elements. The fog, he said, was notorious in the region. September brought with it thick, suffocating mists that could reduce visibility to mere feet. Navigation in those conditions, even for seasoned hikers, became a coin toss. But this explanation left many unconvinced. The seasoned wanderers. This wasn't their first hike into the unknown, but it might have been their last. Jonathan was no novice. He hiked weekly, religiously. He was certified in alpine climbing and had scaled more challenging peaks than Mount Matilee. Rachel, too, was no stranger to the wilderness. She had been hiking with her parents since the age of 5. This trip for them was meant to be a farewell to the quiet stillness of nature before returning to the world of jobs, obligations, and plans. The park manager at Mount Matilee would later report that the area was seldom visited, especially at night. The mountain was known for its brutal dips in temperature, its unpredictable fog, and the eerie quiet that fell over the woods once the sun dipped below the treetops. Slips, falls, confusion, these were known hazards. But for this couple, unlikely. They were prepared. They had gear, supplies, and experience, and yet, something still went wrong. Despite a 10-day search and over 2,000 hours of manpower, the wilderness held its secret close. The mountain, as if conspiring with the fog, whispered nothing. Shadows in the mist. The evidence so far was haunting, but inconclusive. Grainy footage, odd footprints, and an overwhelming silence from the forest. The case was veering away from the expected and into something darker, something far more sinister than a routine disappearance. And there was still one video left, because some footage isn't meant to be seen, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. The mountain's silence. Even the loudest cries for help are sometimes swallowed by the wild. Despite the massive coordinated search that stretched over 10 long days and consumed more than 2,000 man-hours, there was nothing. No footprints leading to a hidden path. No abandoned campsite, not even a scrap of clothing caught on a branch. Jonathan and Rachel had vanished without a trace. Unwilling to surrender to the void, their families took matters into their own hands. Grief became fuel, and determination replaced despair. They hired a professional mountaineering team, experts who had scaled the deadliest peaks across the globe. The hope was that maybe the couple had fallen, perhaps into a narrow crevice hidden by the underbrush, somewhere a helicopter's eye might have missed. The search team was relentless, probing every ravine and crag. But even their experience, their gear, and their trained eyes yielded nothing. It was as though the mountain had closed itself around the couple and erased them from existence. The beast of the north. Mount Matilee. Towering at 2,783 meters, this formidable peak rests within Joffre Lakes Provincial Park, a place both stunning and unforgiving. Rolling alpine meadows dot its lower elevations, their deceptive beauty hiding dangerous terrain. Thick, tangled forests rise like a living wall, their pathways undefined and ever-changing. Nature here is untamed, raw, and indifferent. Hikers are warned to ascend during the day and descend before nightfall. The cold after sunset isn't just discomfort, it's dangerous. Temperatures drop rapidly, fog rolls in like a phantom tide, and visibility can fall to near zero in minutes. For those without proper equipment or training, it can mean disaster. But Jonathan and Rachel weren't unprepared. Purchase records later retrieved painted a picture of detailed planning. Jonathan had bought a light green Terson brand tent, reliable, lightweight, durable. Rachel had selected 2 blue down sleeping bags, capable of withstanding sub-zero temperatures. Together, they acquired canned food, steak, a folding knife, and a canister of bear spray. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment adventure. It was calculated, intentional, and still, they disappeared. Nature or something else. Theory 1. Animal attack. It's the most immediate theory. Wild animals, perhaps a bear or cougar, attacking the couple during their hike or while they camped. But this scenario doesn't hold up well under scrutiny. Mount Matilee is home to black bears and the occasional cougar, yes, but attacks in British Columbia are rare. In the 5 years prior to their disappearance, there had been only 3 recorded animal attacks in the entire province, and not a single fatal one in Joffre Lakes Park. Furthermore, both hikers were prepared. They carried bear spray and a knife. Jonathan, at 6 feet tall and 176 pounds, was strong and experienced in the outdoors. He knew how to respond to an animal threat. He wouldn't have panicked. And if they had been attacked, there would have been signs: blood, torn fabric, disturbed earth. But there was nothing. Theory 2. Lost or trapped. Perhaps they lost their way, or worse, fell into a hidden ravine or valley. The idea has merit. After all, the terrain is deceptive, and even a seasoned hiker can make a misstep. But again, the evidence pushes back. If they had gotten lost or trapped, their camera and Jonathan's phone would not have been found in the car. The last images on the camera were taken on the 4th of September, showing they had already returned once. They had seen the trails, they had made it back to safety, and then they left again. Why? What compelled them to re-enter the wilderness just as it began to grow cold, just as fog began to slip down from the peaks? Theories abounded, but none could explain the vanishing. It was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands, the unseen path. With no signs, no sounds, and no direction, the trail was no longer just cold, it was gone. As investigators wrestled with these unsatisfying explanations, a single thread still remained unpulled. That second video, the one hinted at earlier, the one no one wanted to talk about out loud. Then something else did. The forgotten footage. The forgotten footage revealed perhaps the most chilling clue in Jonathan and Rachel's disappearance. Hidden deep within the camera's memory card was a second video, previously untouched and unspoken of. Unlike the first, which captured a disturbing encounter at a hotel, this footage unfolded in the heart of the forest, raw and saturated with fear. The camera trembled as it followed the couple through dense brush, while the surrounding wildlife appeared agitated, as if warning of something unnatural nearby. The atmosphere grew more tense as distant sounds shattered the silence, branches snapping and a strange, high-pitched whistling that felt distinctly inhuman. The camera jerked around, searching for the source, until it stopped. In the distance stood a towering, dark figure, massive and still, its posture too upright and its form too broad to be any known animal. It didn't charge, it didn't flee, it simply watched, silent, present. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Rachel's voice could be faintly heard, trembling with fear, before Jonathan lowered the camera and the screen went dark. Though only a few minutes long, the video raised far more questions than it answered. The Bigfoot theory. In the aftermath of Jonathan and Rachel's mysterious disappearance, one theory gained traction among those willing to consider the unexplainable: the Bigfoot theory. Dismissed by officials but supported by unsettling footage recovered from the couple's camera, the theory suggested the presence of a towering, shadowy figure deep in the forest, matching descriptions of the cryptid known as Bigfoot. The figure's behavior, motionless yet observant, its presence signaled by broken branches and unnatural whistling, was eerily consistent with patterns described by researchers like Tom Powell, who claimed that Bigfoot used intimidation tactics to scare intruders off. Such behavior wasn't just folklore. In the footage, everything Powell had described was present: restless birds, strange whistles, snapped branches, and something massive watching from the trees. The theory gained even more credibility, not because it was fantastical, but because the details were so grounded in established patterns from decades of reported sightings. For those open to believing, it wasn't just a story, it was a plausible explanation for something inexplicably real. Piecing together the videos, witness reports, and behavior patterns, another possibility emerged, one more harrowing than all the rest. What if Jonathan and Rachel had been stalked long before the forest encounter? What if the figure caught on the hotel video, trying to open their window, wasn't a coincidence, but a warning? Some believe that whatever haunted them in the wilderness had already begun its hunt. Legends say that Bigfoot travels in groups, using the shadows as cover to observe and, when necessary, to act. If the couple had stumbled into such a territory, the consequences would have been dire. Panic, separation, confusion, all would play into the hands of a predator that didn't need speed, only patience. In the deep woods, where fog eats sound and time loses shape, they might have never known they were surrounded. Into the unknown. When logic runs dry, fear fills the space left behind. In this story, what remains isn't solid, it's fragments. A trembling dog, a chilling video, unanswered questions. There are no remains, no definitive proof, just shadows and a vast wilderness that refuses to yield its secrets. The case continues to disturb not because of what is known, but because of what isn't. Every lead is a dead end. Every clue dissolves into speculation. The final pieces of evidence only serve to deepen the silence that surrounds Jonathan and Rachel's disappearance. And that silence, so complete, so final, is where the real terror lies. The final descent. Jonathan's camera and phone, found untouched inside their parked car, tell a grim story. He had made it back, but instead of fleeing, instead of driving away, he left the gear and returned into the woods, perhaps in search of Rachel, perhaps lured. That moment, the decision to go back, is where the known ends and the unknown begins. No signs of struggle, no sounds recorded, just absence. It's believed he panicked upon realizing Rachel hadn't followed and went back to find her. What happened after that will likely never be known, but it is here, in the final descent from the mountain, that the quietest tragedy occurred. 2 lives slipping quietly into the mist. 2 lives frozen in time. Jonathan Yeti and Rachel Bagnor were not ordinary travelers. They were thoughtful, driven, and deeply bonded, set to marry after their trip. Rachel, a medical student with a heart for service, and Jonathan, a principled government volunteer, shared a love not just for each other, but for making the world better. Their disappearance wasn't just a mystery. It was the abrupt, devastating end to a life they were just beginning to build. Even now, 14 years later, their memory lives on in the hearts of those who refuse to believe the story has truly ended.